So good morning to everyone. That's obviously a very powerful video. If you haven't seen it before, some of you look like you may even be crying or tearing up a little bit. It's definitely a powerful video and has done quite well. Many people have shared it. Tens of thousands of people have shared it. Millions of people have viewed it, and it really helped Dove, the brand, grow. So one thing I'm going to talk about today, though, is how we create content like that. Right? That content obviously did very well, but part of the reason you're here today is to understand, well, how do we do that for our companies, for our businesses, and for our clients? So I'm Jonah Berger, and I'm going to talk about today how to generate word of mouth. I was talking in the green room a couple minutes ago to some folks who are going to talk to you later from Porta dos Fundos. It's sort of probably terrible. Did I pronounce it badly? Okay. My Portuguese is not as good as it should be. I apologize. They're going to tell you about some great examples that they've done here. But again, is it just luck? Is it just magic? How do they create things like that? And can you do something similar? And so I want us to start thinking about this. And I'm going to skip. Well, I'll go with this. Each of you here has an idea that you're hoping will catch on, whether it's a product, whether it's a service, whether it's a brand that you're working on, but a whole bunch of other people don't necessarily know about that, right? They're your potential consumers. And so one question is how you can get that idea to spread from you to everyone else, right? So that everyone else of your potential customers, of your potential consumers, has learned about it. How do we do that? And so I want to start by talking about three products or brands that most of us are probably quite familiar with. So on the far side is Disney World. Everyone knows Disney World, yes? Yeah? Okay. Cheerios, I was informed, is not very popular here. It's a breakfast cereal in the United States, almost like a Corn Flakes, but slightly different. And Scrubbing Bubbles is a bathroom cleaner, essentially something you scrub the walls of the shower with. Now, I've talked a lot about examples like this, and when you ask people which of these three brands gets the most word of mouth, people are usually sort of confused. First, I have no idea which of these three gets the most word of mouth. How would I even begin to answer that question? And second, if people had to guess, usually they'd pick Disney. Right? They'd say, well, Disney's a really emotionally engaging experience. It's really fun. It's really exciting. Right? When people come back from a place like Disney World, they can't help but tell all their friends. Who would talk about Cheerios? It's a breakfast cereal. It's really boring. Who would talk about Scrubbing Bubbles? It's a bathroom cleaner. Why would anyone want to talk about that? Yet, if you actually look at the data, many more people talk about Cheerios than talk about the other two. And so what I think that points out is we don't always understand why some products get talked about more than others. And if we don't understand why, it's going to be hard to do it ourselves. So that's a long-winded introduction to a title slide. I'm Jonah Berger. I'm a marketing professor at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And I'm also an author of the New York Times bestseller, Contagious: Why Things Catch On. It's been out in the United States about 6-7 months now. It's sold over 60,000 copies. It should be out in Brazil, I'm told, soon. So hopefully you can get a copy in Portuguese, and if not, the English copy is available online. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to give you just a very brief tour through some of the main ideas of this book. It's a powerful book. It's an important book. It will help you understand word of mouth and how to make it work for you, and I'll highlight a couple of the main ideas. But if you're interested in learning more, this is my website. All the research on which this is based is there. I know some of you may like digging into the data, digging into statistics. I'm not going to present a lot of statistics today. I'm going to tell stories, as that's a good way to convey information. But if you're interested in the statistics, they're all there in the papers on my website. And if you're interested in Twitter and those sorts of things, you can follow me at J1Berger. So let's jump right in. Many of you in the audience probably know this already, but for those who don't, word of mouth has a big impact on consumer behavior. Whatever category you might look at, from skincare to mobile phones, whether we're talking about large, expensive products like cars or inexpensive products like shampoo, word of mouth has a big impact on how people behave. If you think about the last movie you saw, the last book you bought, the last website you visited, it's likely you heard about those things from someone else within your social network. And if you actually dig deeper and you look at the data, word of mouth is over 10 times as effective as traditional advertising. 10 times more effective. And there are two key reasons why. Does anyone know why word of mouth is more effective than traditional advertising? Trust, I heard somebody say, right? We trust our friends. If your friend tells you something, well, you know they have your best interests at heart. If they say that movie was good, you can believe them. But if they say that movie was terrible, you can also believe them because you know they're not trying to sell you anything. But when you see an ad, the exact opposite happens, right? You see an ad, you immediately say, they're trying to convince me, I'm not going to believe what they have to say. If you ever look at a shampoo ad, everyone in their hair is always shiny and they're so happy, right? There's never a shampoo ad where someone goes, ugh, right? I'm sort of unhappy with the product. There's never a food ad where someone eats a bite and they throw it away because it wasn't tasty, right? Everyone is happy and the people smile. If you want to, in advertising, it's fun. I teach a course. I ask my students to design ads, and they always do ads where there's a before and an after. And the before the product, everyone is homeless, they have no friends, and they're poor. But then after the product, they're happy and they're millionaires and everyone loves them, right? And that's what we're used to seeing. This product will change your life, but we don't believe that ad because we know they're trying to get us to buy the product. Whereas our friends are more likely to trust them. So trust is the first reason. The second reason is a little more nuanced. And that's the targeting benefit of word of mouth. So let's say, for example, you sell shampoo. You want to find new customers. How do you find those customers? Well, one thing you do is you take out ads, but you don't just take them out anywhere. You try to find a publication or a television show or a radio program or a digital ad where you think those potential customers would be. So you say, okay, we're looking at women maybe between 20 and 40 with this sort of income. What type of websites do they visit? What type of publications do they read? What type of television shows do they watch? But the problem with that, obviously, is some of those people that are watching that show or seeing that ad online aren't necessarily interested in the product being offered. And that's what's nice about the web, right? If you're paying cost per click, then you know that someone actually looked, but you're still not sure that they're in the market for that product, right? It's hard to get exactly what they want. Who knows someone better, though, than their friends, right? Your friends know you better than anyone else. They not only know if you're interested in a product, but whether you're looking for one right now. Your friends aren't going to tell you, for example, about a great website for baby clothes if you don't have a child. And so word of mouth is really targeted to find the person or people that will find a product most interesting. A great example of this happened to me a couple years ago. Companies often send academics books in the mail, hoping that we'll read them and we'll assign them to our courses so they sell more books. Well, this time they sent me 2 copies of the same book. Now let me tell you, the second copy wasn't any better than the first. It was exactly the same book. So why did they send me 2? Well, they said, hey, Professor Berger, we think you'll like this book, but we think you'll also know someone else who will like this book. Please give that second copy to them. And that's really smart marketing, right? Think about cost per acquisition. You not only have to find those new customers, you have to actually get the product. Here, why not use your customers to find you new ones? Why not use them to go through their social network, almost like a searchlight, and find the personal people that will find that product most interesting or useful? And it's no surprise then that referred customers have 13% higher customer lifetime value than people that come in off the street. Because people that come in through ads or otherwise, they're not always a great fit for your product, whereas people who come in recommended by their friends are definitely interested in that product. People tend to be friends with similar others. If they have a problem or are looking for a product, it's likely they have friends in their social network who also might be looking for their product. And so that's the second benefit, the targeting benefit of word of mouth. Okay, so now we've hopefully seen that word of mouth is important, but you're probably sitting there going, great, I knew that already. How do I get it? I know word of mouth is valuable. I know it's going to drive sales. How do I get it? And so the first thing we usually think about is online technologies. Things like Facebook, things like Twitter, things like LinkedIn, and otherwise. Right? But if you actually look at the data, some word of mouth is online, but some word of mouth is also offline. Offline is also important in addition to online. So we need to think about both and how we use each effectively. But second, by following so much on the technology, by focusing so much on the tools, we've lost focus on the psychology. Why do people share something or not? You can have a page on Facebook that does great, or you can have a page on Facebook that does terribly. Same with Twitter. You can have tens of thousands of followers, but if no one's retweeting your message or no one's buying something that you're trying to sell, it's not going to be very useful, right? Just putting activity into these channels won't necessarily make success. And focusing so much on the technology, a few years ago, you might have been to a conference just like this, and someone might have gotten up on a stage like this and said, do you know what your business needs? MySpace. MySpace is going to change the way you do business forever. And you might have taken notes. And now today, MySpace isn't so useful, right? Not as many people are on MySpace as they used to be. Technologies come and go. Things change. I can't predict whether Facebook and Twitter will be around in 10 years or 15 years. But what I do know is that people will still be sharing. Whether they're staring on Facebook or Twitter or some new technology, to make that work for us, we need to understand why they share in the first place, the psychology behind social transmission. And so that brings me to a very important word, which is luck. You might think that it's luck that drives people to share, right? You just have to get lucky. Or has anyone heard that cats are what make things viral? Has anyone heard that notion that cat pictures and cat videos, there's sort of a theory out there that cats make the internet go round? That if you look underneath the Google building today, for example, there are cats furiously going to make sure the internet is still possible. And if there were no cats, there would be no internet, right? What would we talk about and share? And those are great theories, except they're completely and utterly wrong. They don't tell us anything about why one cat video succeeds and another cat video fails. And they don't tell us about the thousands of things that have nothing to do with cats that go successful, right, that go viral. I just saw a couple videos from the guys who are coming up next. It's not like the Dove video had cats in it. It's not like the folks who I showed you their name before, all their videos have cats in them. So rather than focusing on cats, let's focus on science, right? The psychology behind social transmission. I spent the last decade studying why people talk about and share things. We've looked at thousands of pieces of online content, tens of thousands of brands, and millions of product sales across the United States. And again and again and again, we saw that it wasn't luck and it wasn't chance. There was a science behind why people were sharing, a formula essentially for why people were passing one thing on rather than something else. And so we found that there were 6 key things that came up again and again. 6 key factors that were driving people to talk and share. Social currency, triggers, emotion, public, practical value, and stories. And so I'm going to talk about each of those briefly today and shape how we think about crafting contagious content, right? How we can build the messages that we build around our products, the videos, but also the product themselves. How can we design products that people are more likely to share? When we designed the book, for example, we thought about how to make the cover more likely that people would pass on from one person to another and more likely to see and imitate. How can we design our products for viral growth? 2 things, though, before I get to this. The first, I don't mean to suggest that I can guarantee you 10 million views. Anyone who can guarantee you 10 million views, and really shares. Views are easy, right? Views, we just advertise a lot and the views go up. What we really care about is shares, because shares are free. We don't have to pay anyone for shares. Right? If we can get people to pass it on, if I can get you to pass on to you, to pass on to you, to pass on to you, I only have to pay for the first person to see it. Right? So it's not just views, shares are really important. But I'm not going to guarantee I can give you 10 million shares. What I can do is I can increase your likelihood of sharing. Right? Not all of you need 10 million views, that would be fine, but what you really want is just each person who uses your brand to tell one person about it. Right? If each person told just one additional person, your brand would grow extremely well. Right? And so that's the goal here, to increase the number of people that are talking and sharing. And the second thing to think about is I'm going to focus, let's see, there we go, on the message rather than the messenger. So you might have heard that certain people are more influential than others, that certain people have more followers or more friends or are more persuasive. And so if you can just get those people your product, you're going to be really successful. Doesn't matter whether the product is good or bad, just as long as you get it to those people, it'll catch on. And again, that's a fun theory, except it's completely and utterly wrong. I would love to be a social media guru. Apparently, all you need to do as a social media guru is have a theory. You don't need to collect any data. You just get to assume that your theory is right. And that's a fun job, but that's not the job I have. I'm a professor at a business school. We have to do academic research. And it turns out that this idea that the messenger is more important, there's no data to back that up. It's a really compelling story, but it's not right. And so the message is more important than the messenger. Whether someone has 10 friends or 10,000, they're still going to influence what those friends do. Whether someone's really persuasive or not, their friends still listen to them more than their friends listen to celebrities. And so how can we build messages that are more likely to be spread whether someone has 10 friends or 10,000? All right, so I want to start by telling a story, and we'll start by talking about social currency. And this story is about a restaurant in New York. Anyone here from New York or visited New York recently? Couple people? Okay. So imagine you're on a business trip to New York, let's say. Maybe it's your first time there. And you're walking around on a Saturday afternoon and your stomach is grumbling, you're sort of hungry, so you need to find a place to eat. So you walk down a street and you notice a place with a big hot dog-shaped sign with the words "Eat Me" written on it in what look like mustard. You say, I haven't had a hot dog in a while, so why not? So you walk down a flight of stairs into a restaurant called Criff Dogs. Now, if you like hot dogs, you'll be in heaven at Criff Dogs. They have every hot dog you can imagine, from a hot dog with bacon, eggs, and cheese, a little bit rough on the stomach, but interesting nonetheless, or a hot dog with green onion and pineapple. Also interesting, but different. And finally, sort of a traditional hot dog with just ketchup and mustard. So you're munching on your hot dog when you notice something sort of unusual. I'll go on this side, in the corner of the room. What looks like a phone booth, right? One of those things like a payphone on the corner used to be, and you never see them anymore. So just for kicks, slide open the door and walk inside that booth. It's a little cramped, right? It's tight in there. There's not a lot of room. But on the wall, you'll see something you probably have never seen before, which is a rotary dial phone. One of the phones that you stick your finger into and you go around in a circle. So just for fun, stick your finger and say the number 3, go around in a circle, and hold the phone to your ear. And you'll hear it go ring, ring, and then someone will pick up the other line, and they'll ask you whether you have a reservation. Reservation? I'm in a phone booth inside of a hot dog restaurant. What would I have a reservation for? But if you're lucky and you have a reservation, or they happen to have space, the back of that phone booth will open, and you'll be led into a secret bar called Please Don't Tell. Now, Please Don't Tell has violated a number of traditional laws of marketing, right? No sign on the street, no sign inside the restaurant. They've done everything they can to make themselves difficult to find. Yet every day they're full. They've never advertised 3 p.m., their phone line's open, by 3:30, all the seats are gone. You have to hit redial again and again and again to get through. It's so busy, right? They only have a certain number of seats. So how did they do it? Well, let me tell you a secret about secrets. Think about the last time someone told you a secret. They told you not to tell anyone else. What's the first thing you then did with that information? You told somebody, right? Because having access to something that not everyone else knows about makes you look good, right? Makes you look smart and in the know. It gives you what I'll call social currency. Just like the car we drive and the clothes we wear, the things we say affect how other people see us, right? When I came to see you guys today, I was thinking, well, what should I wear, right? It's sort of a CPG crowd. There's some advertising agency folks, so maybe I'll wear something a little fun. I'll wear my sneakers that are sort of dressy, but sort of fun also. I recognize that you would make inferences about me based on how I was dressed, right? Is that sort of a cool guy? Is it a button-down sort of usual guy? What's he like? Well, let me look at his clothes and make inferences about him based on it. Same with what we talk about and share. Right? If you're the first person to share a hot news tip, maybe on the technology product that just came out, well, your friends will think you're in the know. If you're always talking about new restaurants and things you know about that, people will think you're a foodie. What we share affects how other people see us. So if one thing we need to do to get consumers to talk about us is to make them look good by talking about us. The better we can make them look, the more likely they'll want to talk about it. So let's dive in here for a couple ways to apply it. The first way is to make people feel like insiders, like they have access to something that not everybody else has. Right? That's exactly what Please Don't Tell did. If you went there to that bar, you would love to tell everybody, right? Because it makes you look really good. Like you're an insider, like you know things that not everyone else knows. LinkedIn did a great job of this a few months ago. So you might have gotten an email from them. They sent an email out to about 5% or 10% of their followers saying, listen, you top 5% or 10%, you have one of the most influential profiles on LinkedIn. You have the most followers, you have the most connections, people click on your page a lot, you're really influential. Congratulations. Now, people who got this email, they felt pretty good, right? They gave themselves a pat on the back. Look at me, I'm influential, isn't that great? But that's not the only thing they did. They also shared that email with their entire social network. Why? Well, it gave them social currency. They looked really good to have one of the top 5% or 10% of profiles on the website. But notice they didn't just talk about themselves. LinkedIn got to come along for the ride. Because by forwarding that email, I have one of the top profiles, they have to say on what website they have one of the top profiles. No one's going to say, hey, LinkedIn is great, but they're happy to share an email if it makes them look good that LinkedIn gets to be a part of. Right? So that first thing we need to do is make people feel like insiders. I've done some work. Do you guys have Clear here, the shampoo? Okay. So a very famous product worldwide. It's a Unilever brand, but it hadn't been released in the United States. And so they wanted to release it in the States. They did this about 4 or 5 months ago, but they needed to come up with a way to release it. So they did something really interesting. Rather than advertising, they actually gave away some of the product to employees at Unilever, as well as the agency partners of the brand. And so for the first month, the only way you could get access to this Facebook site about Clear was if you knew someone else who had already gotten access. So imagine I only told people in the room about this book, and I said to get access to the website, you can only get it if one of you gives it to someone else. Well, everyone felt really special to have access to this secret thing. And so they gave it to their friends. They gave samples away to their friends. They gave access to the site away for their friends. It made them feel smart and in the know. They got over 10,000 likes within the first week of releasing this campaign with no advertising. Because people shared it because they felt special. Google did the same thing. Do you remember when Gmail came out? I don't know if it was the same thing here, but at least in the United States, the only way you could get access to Gmail was if you knew someone who worked at Google, or you knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who worked at Google, right? And so those people felt special, and they told everyone else, I only have 10 invites. You special friends of mine, let me give you one of those invites. Right? It gave people special access, made them feel like insiders, and made them want to share with others. So the first way to generate social currency is to make people feel like insiders. The second way is to find the inner remarkability. And this is really important. So some of you may be sitting here going, okay, I get it. If you're a high technology product or you're a cool hidden bar, it's easy to get social currency. But what if I sell a really boring product, a really mundane product? What's an example of a product you think is not very remarkable? Really boring product. Somebody? Toilet paper. Okay, toilet paper I would say is really boring, right? Cement might be really boring. Pens might be really boring. And you might say, well, there's no way to make that product remarkable, right? There's nothing surprising, novel, or interesting about toilet paper. Give me a minute, I'll come back to toilet paper. But first I want to talk about a different example. You could think about the same thing with household appliances, like a dishwasher, or maybe even a blender. Well, let me show you how a company got over 200 million views for a video about blenders.
Will it blend? That is the question.
How many people have seen one of these videos? Okay, a couple. You guys are in for a treat.
I love my new iPhone. It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. Let's find out. I think I'm going to push the smoothie button. I smoke. Don't breathe this. Now, you fans on YouTube have asked me to blend an iPhone, so I did it. But I have another. I'm going to put this on eBay.
How many people found this video at least a little remarkable? Just a little bit, right? Most everybody, okay? This video, this particular clip has over 10 million views. The set has over 200 million views. Sales, when they came out, these videos, went up 700%. And this blender's not cheap. It's actually $400. It's in your local smoothie shop. It's really more of a B2B product than a B2C product. But these videos really helped it out. The coolest part, though, is they did this for blenders. If they can do this for blenders, you can do this for any product or idea. Because it's not just is the product born remarkable or not, it's finding the inner remarkability behind that product. Dove's, the real beauty thing, they did a great job of the same thing. Showing people what to show them rather than tell them about real beauty. If Dove said, hey, women are beautiful, we need to look at ourselves more positively, everyone would have said fine, and no one would have shared it. But they showed you in a remarkable way how to do that. Same with toilet paper, right? I actually got toilet paper to be one of the most discussed products at a party at my house about 6 months ago. Do you know how I did it? I put a roll of toilet paper in the bathroom, but it wasn't a roll of white toilet paper. It was actually black toilet paper. And I don't know about you, but if you walked into someone's bathroom and they had colored toilet paper, you would tell someone else when you walked out of that bathroom. You might not yell it loud. You might whisper, the host is really weird. He has colored toilet paper. right? But you tell someone because that's remarkable, because you've never seen colored toilet paper before. And so any product can be remarkable if you think about what makes it remarkable, finding that inner remarkability. Okay, so that's social currency. Next, let's talk about triggers. And to do that, I want to use an example some of you might be familiar with. Are you familiar with Rebecca Black's song, Friday? How many people are familiar with this song? Okay, for those who haven't heard it, let me play a quick clip.
This is a demonstration of Flip-Format.
Catch my bus, I see my friends kicking in the front seat, sitting in the back seat. Gotta make my mind up, which seat can I take? It's Friday, Friday, gotta get down on Friday.
Usually there are a couple people that are sort of like dancing a little bit to the song. So if you've never heard this before and you thought this song was terrible, you're not alone. People hate this song. Most people, at least, hate this song. Some people have called it the worst song ever. If you look on YouTube, the percentage of thumbs down is over 75%, which is pretty impressive. So people hate this song. Yet it has over 300 million views. 300 million. The most viral video of 2011. And so one question is why? What about this video made people want to share it? Well, as a scientist, I wanted to dig into this, so I went and got some data. And these are the searches for the phrase Rebecca Black on YouTube over time. So you can type in, actually on YouTube or any Google search, you can type in a phrase and look at the number of people that search for that phrase. And so what this is saying is, well, no one was searching for it, and then a whole bunch of people, and then it went down, and then another spike, and then it went down, then another spike, and then it went down. Interesting. If you look closer, the spikes are actually every 7 days. And if you look even closer, you'll notice that they're every Friday, which is the same name as Rebecca Black's song. This song is equally bad every day of the week. I've checked. I listened on Monday, I listened on Tuesday, I listened on Wednesday, I listened on Thursday, I listened on Friday. Song is the same. It doesn't change. Equally bad every day of the week. But Friday provides a ready reminder, what psychologists would call a trigger, to make people think about and talk about and share the song. Because if something's top of mind, it's much more likely to be tip of tongue. Even if we don't like something, even if we don't find it interesting, if we're thinking about it, we're more likely to share it. Why do we talk so often about the weather, for example, or about the local sports team? Not because it's the most exciting thing, but because we're thinking about it. And so the second thing we need to do is make our product more top of mind. We need to link it to something else in the environment to make people think about it. So, I guess they took out the other things there, so I'll just go through them even though they're not there. So I was going to show you the mentions of Cheerios on Twitter. If you look at the traffic mentions of Cheerios over time, what you see is, when do people talk about Cheerios? Every morning. Right? Every morning they talk about Cheerios. Big spike in attention to Cheerios in the morning, then it goes down the rest of the day because it's a breakfast cereal. People eat a breakfast cereal, they think about the product, and then they talk about it. Same with any other product, right? When people use the product, they're much more likely to think about it and much more likely to talk about it. And that's the problem with Disney, right? Disney's a really engaging experience, but people don't go very often, right? So if you don't go, you're not thinking about it, so you're not talking about it. Whereas a shampoo might be really boring, but people use it often, so they're much more likely to talk about it. And so the question is, what can you link your product to? What thing in the environment can you link it to? So in the US, for example, if people said peanut butter and, someone would say jelly. Because in the United States, we think about peanut butter and jelly. Or rum and Coke, right? Those two things go together. It's almost like rum is a little advertisement for Coke. Is there people drink rum and Coke here? Yeah? So if you think about one, you think about the other. So what's that rum to your Coke? What's the thing that's going to make people think about you even when you're not there? Kit Kat did a great job of this a few years ago. So Kit Kat was really popular, but it had sort of fallen out of favor. Sales were down about 30%, not as many people were eating it. So they came up with a really simple campaign. Kit Kat and coffee. Right? Every time you think about coffee, think about Kit Kat. Thinking about having a coffee break, think about Kit Kat. Why is coffee a really good trigger for Kit Kat? You drink it often, right? Frequent. Multiple times of day or multiple days of week. The more you drink it, the more then you think about Kit Kat. So you want to pick something that comes up often. Right? With Rebecca Black, Friday's good because it's once a week. You could come out with a song about Leap Day, right? Leap Day, something, something, Leap Day. But that wouldn't come up very often, only once every few years. So you want to pick something that comes up often. More frequent, more triggered, more top of mind. Okay? So I'm not going to have a huge amount of time today to talk about emotion, but I'll talk about it very briefly. The more we care about something, the more we share. Right? Dove did a great job with that. Dove got people to get a little teary-eyed, right, to care more about women's health and women's issues than they had before. Same thing with funny videos, right? You see a lot of funny videos on the web that do really well. And so one question you could ask is, well, do all emotions increase sharing, or do some increase it and some decrease it? And it's actually not just that positive increase and negative decrease. A lot of negative emotions get shared also, like anger, for example, or like anxiety. And so it's not just is the emotion positive or negative, it's whether they activate people or not. Things like humor, but also anger, are high arousal emotions. They activate us, they drive us to action, and make us more likely to share something. So if you want to read more, you can read about it in the emotions chapter. Let's see if, yes, good, okay. So the next dimension to talk about is public. And this is less about more word of mouth and more about imitation. So people tend to imitate others. Right? If you see someone else wearing something or driving something or listening to something, you might be more likely to buy that thing yourself. There's that old phrase, monkey see, monkey do, right? Which is all about the idea when we see someone else, we're more likely to do what they're doing. But there's a really important part of that phrase, and that's the seeing part. Because if we can't see what someone else is doing, it's going to be really hard to imitate that thing. Right? I might be walking around today, I might see a gentleman with a really sharp jacket, and I might say, I like that jacket, I'm going to go buy something similar. But it's harder for someone to imitate someone else's socks because you can't see them, right? And so to imitate something, you have to be able to see it. If you can't see it, you can't imitate it. And so one thing we need to do is to make the private public. Make things that are hard to see more publicly visible. So you remember the portable CD player? Right? You used to have to run in place like this to listen to music. Right? You had to make a choice, do I want to listen to music or do I want to exercise, but I can't do both at once because the CD will just skip. It was a dark time in the history of music. There were these things called CDs. You had to listen to 16 songs by the same artist. You couldn't switch around. Okay, so not a great product, right? We all agree. And then they came out with something new called the digital music player. But it was expensive, right? And so I have this thing that I'm using. It's not great. And I have this new thing that it's expensive. Is it worth switching? I don't know. Your consumers have the same problem all the time. They're using something already. There's something new. Is it worth changing to the new thing? I don't know if it's worth changing. So what do people do in those situations? Well, they look around to see what other people are doing. But if everyone has black headphones, if Sony and Kobe and all the brands have black headphones, you have no idea what product someone's listening to. And then Apple comes out with white headphones. And now if you see one person with white headphones or 5 people or 10 people, you realize, wow, that product must be pretty good. Maybe I should do something similar. Right? Maybe I should go out and buy that product. It's worth getting rid of that the portable music player and switching to the digital music player. Right? If I can see it, I can imitate it. But if I can't see, I can't imitate. So logos are one way to do that, right? Big logos are one way to do it, but there's also other ways, right? Color of the product is a nice way to do it. When people buy something, often when they buy something at Tiffany's, for example, they walk out with a bag that they then want to show everyone else because it gives them social currency, but along the way, they're a walking advertisement for the brand. By making the private public, we make it easier to imitate. Talking about practical value, I'll just go through this one quickly. Again, you can read about it more in the book. But practical value is all about useful information, right? Can we share something that people are going to find useful, right? 10 tips for how to use PowerPoint, 5 things you should do at the office to get promoted. All of this is useful information. And so one thing we can do to make information useful is frame discounts, right? So if there's a product that's, let's say, 20 in the United States, it would be dollars, right? So $20, and we can make that product $5 off, $5 off 20. What percent off would that be? 5 off 20. 25%. Everyone agree that 25% and 5 off 20 are the same? Economically, they're the same? Yes? Do they feel the same to the consumer? No. Same actual monetary amount, but 25% off seems bigger to the consumer, so they're more likely to take that deal. Seems like a better deal than 5 off 20. But when you get above 100, it's actually the opposite. If it's 2,000, for example, what's 25% off 2,000? Come on, math whizzes, 500, right? Come on, guys, come on. 500 off 2,000 is the same as 25. We all agree 25%? But there the 500 seems bigger than the 25%. Same amount economically, but feels different to the consumer and changes behavior. And so it's all about, I call that the rule of 100, right? Below 100, it's one way. Above 100, it's the opposite. How do we frame discounts to make that information more impactful, that will make people more likely to purchase and more likely to share? Okay, last but not least, I want to talk about stories, but I want to talk about a particular type of story. And marketers are not always very good at storytelling. We're usually very good at selling. We think our job is to just tell people how great the product is, and if they haven't bought yet, well, then we need to tell them again. And if they haven't bought, we'll need to tell them again and tell them again and tell them again until they buy the product. What we need to do is think about telling stories, but a particular type of story. So I want to tell you a story about 3 types of ice. And so there's a bar in Philadelphia, that's where I'm from, Philadelphia in the US, that has really high-end cocktails. Really very expensive. They have shaved cinnamon on this part, and they have very high-end liqueur, no vodka, no Red Bull, just very high-end drinks. But if you look at people who go to that restaurant, that bar, when they walk out, they tend to say one thing in particular, and that is that the bar has 3 types of ice. Now, I don't know about you, but the first time I heard there were 3 types of ice, I was like, there are types of ice? I thought there was only one type of ice. What would be the difference between these types of ice? Well, it turns out that there's one type of ice that fills from the bottom up, so there are no air bubbles. There's another type of ice that's chipped off of large blocks. And there's a third type of ice that's just very small swizzles. And 3 types of ice, why would you care about them? Except that they melt at different rates. And you wouldn't care about ice melting at different rates, the different types, unless you cared about really good drinks. Because certain drinks want to be more watered down, they need ice to melt faster. And other drinks need to be less watered down, they need ice to melt slower. And so having 3 types of ice is really good if you care a lot about drinks, which is what this bar does. So now think about it. If a customer walks out of your bar and they say, hey, this bar has really good drinks, that's not very memorable. But if the customer walks out and they say they have 3 types of ice, not only is that very memorable, other people are like, what do you mean? I want to find out more. But it also carries the message that we have really good drinks. It's a story, but it's a particular type of story. Does everyone remember the story of the Trojan horse? Greeks versus the Trojans, right? They build that wooden horse. This is what I'll call a Trojan horse story. It's not just an exterior, it has something hidden inside. The story is the vessel that carries the brand message. Same thing, think about back to that blender that cut through the iPhone. That's a really remarkable blender, right? But it's not only a remarkable blender, you can't share that video without realizing that the blender is really tough. Now, they could have said, we make a really tough blender. Would anyone have shared that if they just got on TV and said, we make a really tough blender? No, right? That's not worth sharing. But a blender that cuts through an iPhone is pretty amazing, and it's a vessel that carries the message that we make a really tough blender. And so we need to think not just about storytelling, but how do we create Trojan horse stories? Stories that carry the brand or the benefit along for the ride. Notice what they do to build a Trojan horse story. Does anyone speak Egyptian, by the way? I don't think so. Okay, so it will be in Egyptian. I'll do a voiceover, and there's some subtitles at the bottom. Can I make you a cheese sandwich? No, I'm not hungry.
Just you know why
Panda. ما يتقلهاش لا.
Never say no to Panda. Good morning, good morning. I got you Panda cheese for breakfast. No thanks, I don't feel well.
You know why will by and by.
Panda.
Never say no to Panda. Dad, why don't we get some Panda cheese? Enough, that's too much already.
You know why and I will by and
Panda.
Never say no to Panda. And last but not least, just one more. Dad, why don't we get some Panda?
Just you know why.
Get one.
Why you and I.
Get one more.
باندا ما يتقلهاش لا.
So if you want to check out the video, it's great. There's a copy up on my site. But it's not only funny, right? Humor drives people to share. It's also something else. I challenge you to share that ad with anyone else and not remember the word panda, which is exactly the brand that they want you to remember. They didn't just build a story. They didn't just build engaging content. Sometimes people say, okay, I get it. Viral, we just need to do something crazy. Right? As long as we do something crazy, people will share it and it will help the brand. But it only helps the brand if at the end of the day, people remember what brand it's for. Right? And so it's not just about crazy content. It's about building valuable virality. Building a Trojan horse story that has a candy shell that's really tasty, but the brand gets to come along for the ride. Okay, so to wrap up today, we talked about 6 key steps to boosting word of mouth. And if you wondered why STEPS has 2 P, it's because I'm not very clever. I couldn't come up with a better an acronym for the framework. But it's social currency, making people look good, like that hidden bar. Triggers, Rebecca Black is viewed more on Friday. How can we bet a trigger to make people think about us? Emotion, when we care, we share. Public, the more visible it is, the easier it is to imitate. Right? Easy to imitate shirts, hard to imitate socks. Practical value, news you can use, framing information to make it more useful, and finally wrapping the message in a story or narrative that carries it along for the ride. So 2 things I want you to do, next steps when you leave here today in terms of thinking about crafting contagious content. First, find your message. What's that thing that you want people to share? Dove didn't just say, hey, I want more word of mouth. They said, hey, we want people to talk about real beauty. And then they said how we can build a shell around that. And so to do that, think about applying those 6 key steps. Not every message needs all 6. Right? Dove was very good on emotion, right? High on the E, not so good on triggers, not so good on social currency. One of the 6 needs to be good. And so if you have ads, each one can focus on one of the 6, right? If you're working on social media, well, some of your posts can be about social currency, some can be about emotion, and some can be about practical value. And so if you're interested, I've built a workbook to help people apply this. It's just on the resource tab of my website. Free downloadable workbook will help you work through each of the 6. It's not random, it's not luck, it's not chance, and I'm sorry, it's not cats. There's a science behind why things catch on. It's all about human motivation, and if we understand that science, we can craft contagious content, and we can get our products and ideas to become popular. Thank you very much.